We'll start with God exists. So God exists from Psalm 14 verse 1, the first part, which says, "The fool says in his heart, there is no God." The fool says in his heart, there is no God. And just three quick observations about the existence of God and how the Bible views this. The first is that the Bible never attempts to prove that God exists. It's presupposed. So the Bible presupposes that God exists and makes no attempt to prove it. To the Bible writers, God's existence was foundational, it was essential, and it was completely self-evident. So if anybody denied that he existed, that person is de facto a fool, and any attempt to argue and provide proofs for his existence becomes unnecessary because it's self-evident that he exists. Of course, and this brings us to our second point, we live in a different world today, and today many Westerners presuppose that God doesn't exist. They presuppose that he doesn't exist because they've come to believe that they can explain the origin of all things without needing God to be present as a creator. And so for many, non-belief has become the default setting. And when we engage with people who see the world that way, that non-belief is default and perhaps even, at least in their mind space, the majority view, the burden of proof shifts. So these people would think that the burden of proof rests on the person who believes that God exists because they think the majority are on their side. But there are two problems with that. One, the majority are often dangerously wrong. We can think of any number of examples where the majority have been dangerously wrong. For a large portion of history, the majority of people believed the earth was flat. The majority of Germans in the lead up to World War II believed they were going to do the human race a service by persecuting Jews. The majority of whites under apartheid believed that God had made them superior. So the majority is often wrong. So that's one problem. Another problem is that some things just don't lend themselves to proofs, and at least not proofs in the scientific sense. And there, I'll give just two simple examples. The simple statement that there are no absolute truths is a famous example. So the statement itself is an absolute truth claim, but it's self-defeating. But even something as simple as saying, "I love my son," doesn't lend itself to scientific proof. However, anyone who saw us wouldn't have any doubt about it. So things can be obviously true, but not liable to scientific proofs. And so, thirdly, when it comes to God's existence, the key word is not proof, but sense. Not proof, but sense. The real question is, how does belief or non-belief in God best make sense of the world around us? What belief system will enable us to offer the most coherent, consistent, and convincing explanation of everything that we see in the world around us? And that explanation needs to account for the origin of all things, the existence of beauty, the occurrence of miracles, the universality of morality, the reality of conscience, etc., etc. Does belief in God or non-belief in God's existence best enable us to explain these kinds of things? So, in conclusion, the biblical view, God exists. It's the fool who says there's no God. Romans tells us that God's existence is evident to the world, but many reject him out of foolishness and sinfulness. I'll end with a quote by Professor Thomas Nagel, who says, "It isn't just that I don't believe in God and naturally hope that I'm right in my belief. It's that I hope there is no God. I don't want there to be a God. I don't want the world to be like that."